now by Matt Weisbecker, or if you're German, Weisbecker, who was just on a panel. He's from NBC, head of digital sales.
That's correct. Digital media sales, Western region, I should say specifically.
Okay, all right, we'll be specific. So actually, just before we started, I was asking questions about kind of how you coordinate with a traditional sales team, and my question, which you answered off camera, but we're going to answer it on camera now, was just around, is there a lot of close collaboration between the digital side and the traditional side?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely yes. I've been at NBC now 4 years, and since I got there, we've worked very closely with that broadcast team. So my entire digital team actually sits on the same floor with the sales team on the West Coast. So we collaborate with them, two-headed sales calls. We strategize against specific clients, and in the upfront specifically, absolutely go out with them on a coordinated approach and try to sell advertisers into essentially 360 programs that really surround a particular program and all the different platforms that consumers touch that platform with.
So basically going to the sponsor or the advertiser and saying, we can help you hit this demographic across platforms, devices for NBC or one of the cable networks.
Yeah. It usually starts with a particular advertiser agency being interested in a particular show that we have, whether it's on NBC, Sci-Fi, Bravo, or USA. And then from there, developing a program around that. So usually online is an activation point for them to essentially activate their on-air media. So on-air for us is really the reach mechanism. It's a way to reach a very large audience, and then the online program is a way for them to essentially activate with those consumers on a more one-to-one basis online.
I just want to quickly get back to the collaboration. In the early stages of traditional meet digital, go work together and play nicely, was it love at first? I mean, you hear horror stories of, at newspapers or whoever it may be, where the traditional guys are very territorial. What was it like in the early days?
I think, the early days were just 3 or 4 years ago, but there was definitely, some challenges there, but I think for the most part it was actually a very positive experience, and it continues to be so today. The NBC, I think, was in a position 4 years ago, and probably still largely today, where they really have to differentiate themselves in the marketplace on something other than ratings. So even going back 3 or 4 years ago, the focus of our content was really, or of our sales strategy, was to go to advertisers and really sell them into the concept of a show and really touching all those touch points with consumers. So it really was something that we collaborated with very closely, and I think they embraced us because, again, we helped them differentiate in the marketplace. And I think it actually gave us an advantage. I think we were doing it before any of the other networks were really focused on that. I think now everyone's sort of in the same spot and they've probably caught up, but we still have a little bit of a lead, I think a little bit more of experience in terms of programs that we've executed, and therefore some great case studies to show our advertisers. And I think the other networks and other cable companies are now catching up to that. So it's getting close to even across the board. But from NBC specifically, the collaboration with our on-air teams was very good. They've been very supportive of us all the way up to the top as well, where sales management would incentivize both on-air and online for us to work together from a compensation standpoint. So that obviously helped as well.
Who makes the sales across? I mean, the NBC.com website proper, you own. I'm assuming your digital team, and in conjunction with other people, make the sales there. Something like Hulu, where you own a piece of it, right? And then maybe another aggregator of content that I'm assuming you guys are trying different platforms, and companies are approaching you who say, like we had Flow TV on, Xbox, Boxy, all these other kind of aggregation platforms. When you sell it on your own site, you make the sale. What happens on a Hulu?
So the other distribution platforms you mentioned, Hulu's sort of the exception because it's a joint venture and because we partially own it. The arrangement with Hulu, while they have their own separate sales force, we sell all of our specific content on Hulu. So whether that's a USA show or an NBC show, if you want to target that specific show, you would come to the NBCU sales force to purchase that. If you were looking to buy more of a genre or a collection of shows together, then Hulu would probably be the source that you'd go to directly to purchase that, because you'd be able to purchase shows more than just NBCU. You could add their other content partners to your buy. But if you're looking for 30 Rock or Office, really the only place you can buy that content specifically is through NBC. So that's how we manage our content there. All the other distribution platforms you mentioned, we don't have official distribution deals with, Flow being the exception. Flow is a big partner of ours, so we have, I think, 3 channels now on Flow TV, and we're distributing our content there.
And how's that going?
It's going great. I think from a distribution standpoint, it's not there yet, but it's a nice complement to our program. We've absolutely sold inventory into Flow Experience as part of other deals that are happening both online and on air. And again, Flow is just another touch point with that consumer. So if a show is streaming live, it's live on broadcast, we stream it the following day online, it's also probably streaming linearly on Flow TV, so why not put the advertiser in all those touch points? But the other distribution partners, Xbox, even PlayStation, our strategy there right now is really to enable their web browser. So if you're on PlayStation and you go and launch their browser within the console, you can access NBC.com directly from there and stream content that way. So in that case, we still own that ad because they're essentially just accessing our website through that
They're almost like an iframe
around our content, exactly.
Okay.
So the pre-roll and the advertiser is still going to be something that we've sold to our partners.
Got it. Give me a case study. Give me an example of a fun deal you put together recently where you lived up to the cross-platform hype that you've probably been saying to the people you're trying to pitch.
Well, there's a couple of them. Nissan and Heroes was a big project that my team worked on. So we, for 3 years, we renewed them in a concept where they were doing a big on-air promotion. They would present the premiere of the show with limited commercial interruption, and then go online and support that as well with roadblocks and supporting that same episode. They had on-air integration into the actual show itself. We integrated them into a graphic novel online around that, and then as I mentioned with Flow TV, we actually, when they sponsored that premiere, we had that same sponsorship carry through on online streaming. So when that episode went online, they followed it there. When it went on Flow, they followed it there. So everywhere that episode that they owned in the premiere, their advertising went with it. And then the other one that I would mention that we're working on now, and it's actually a renewal, is TurboTax. So TurboTax is doing a really cool program where not just cross-media, but really enterprise selling. So they're actually partnering with every one of our cable nets, USA, Bravo, Sci-Fi, Oxygen, as well as NBC, NBC Sports, and doing a custom vignettes that air on air and then drive people online to experience essentially a social experience to vote on clips and pick their favorites, essentially, and that all ties into their social strategy online. So it's a very cool program. It involves on-air, online. We're distributing it also through our digital out-of-home network, where it goes on gas pumps and in taxi cabs. So there's a lot of different distribution touch points for that, and mobile will be a piece of that as well.
So given that you're pushing content, you're helping to push the TurboTax brand out through a lot of platforms and in a variety of ways beyond just, hey, we'll put a 5-second ad, or on TV a 30-second ad spot. It brings up the issue of metrics and measurement. Mm-hmm. So how are you working with you have mobile, you have web, you have television, you have a whole hybrid model. What are some new ways of measuring and metrics that you're asking them to measure success against?
Mobile is still a challenge. So I don't think we figured out how to measure or involve mobile in our research that we're doing. Right now the research is really focused on air and online and how those work together, brand lift when you combine the two, brand favorability, all those things that we've heard before. We do IAG studies as well that actually show integration. So when you integrate into a show, what that does for your brand, and there's a study that we do for that. We'll do cross-media studies with either Dynamic Logic or Insight Express that'll actually show, again, that lift when you combine the two programs together. Those are really sort of the starting point now. We'll do some custom one-off studies as well for certain advertisers, but that's really the essence of what we're looking at. And then, of course, looking and working very closely with not just the agencies, but with the clients directly and real-time getting their results back. So often some advertisers will have specific goals. As an example would be opt-in. So if they're running a sweepstakes, they want a certain number of hand raisers or people that have opted in to get information back from them. So there are certain metrics that we're shooting for and aiming towards within the campaign, but for the most part, that measurement is definitely a part that is still a challenge for us to try to compensate or calculate, and specifically when you look at the social environment and social media. So when what we do goes virally and goes off of our domain and our widgets, and people take it and make it a part of their social network, measuring that effectiveness outside of our own domain gets even more challenging. But we know it's obviously happening, and it's working because we see the results from our advertisers and our clients coming back on the back end. But in terms of measuring that with research, that's still a challenge.
Yeah. The Olympics are obviously coming up. That must be a fun thing to start
in February,
putting package
absolutely.
deals together. So what are, pretend I'm Kraft and I have a big marketing budget.
That category is sold out, unfortunately, already, so I can't. I'm just kidding. The Olympics for us is big. It's a franchise and a marquee platform for us that, frankly, has a very high premium on it. So it's not something for everyone. It's really, I think, the big brand advertisers, and most of our digital platforms have been sold in collaboration with On Air. So up until recently, and for most of our key sponsorships, you could not buy an online sponsorship as a standalone package. It had to be purchased in combination with something from On Air. So that's the genesis of that program. I mean,
and that's going to be the same for the coming Olympics, right?
Yes.
It's you're buying the mixed bag.
You absolutely are. I mean, I think there's always that you can wait a little bit, and there may be some inventory at the end that becomes available that you can buy into, but you're taking a chance that it may not be there. So most of the key marquee sponsorships, the cool stuff on the site, is absolutely sold in combination with the TV side. Now that said, the Olympics for us it's really about the Olympics. I mean, when you look at a media plan, you'll often hear people saying, "Well, I don't want run of Olympics." Well, Olympics is Olympics. There's not really run of versus certain areas. It's all Olympics. It's all valuable. It's all compelling, and it's in a very condensed window. You're talking about 17 days in February, where if you look at Beijing as an experience, we went from essentially zero unique users to 52 million unique users overnight. So it's a site that grows very, very quickly, and is gone very, very quickly as well, because it's 17 days. So from an advertising standpoint, it's really more about maximizing exposure. We're very flexible with advertisers, so they're not necessarily locked into any one sport. They more rotate across multiple sports, so that in the event that one sport has a big, look at Beijing.
Badminton.
Exactly. Curling actually is the one that we're expecting to be huge this year. But if you look back to even Beijing, everyone knew that Michael Phelps was going to be a big story, but nobody knew that first relay race where he won it by a hair, was going to be what it was. I mean, that became a huge event. The streams of that clip were huge. We could have never predicted that when we were selling the sponsorship 6 months before. So we really have to be flexible in how we organize advertisers, and we can't have anyone own any one thing. They own sections and sponsorships, but the media itself is more of a rotational basis across the site, so that everyone can benefit when a particular sport hits or pops.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but with Beijing, I don't think you streamed anything live to the site. I mean, I know, like, for example, with Michael, you did some.
Yeah.
So I know, for example, Michael Phelps' race, I watched it on the NBC site as that kind of post-event on-demand clip. How much stuff did you stream live, and then fast forward to 2010, and are you going to...
They were close this time, so it's confusing.
And are you going to increase the amount of live streaming? Because I also think about, as a curling enthusiast myself, I would like to watch every curling event, and you're probably not going to air that on prime time. So for
You're
people...
in luck. We're streaming curling. So curling you can get
live?
Live, yes. There are two sports, I believe, that are streaming live right now that are confirmed: hockey and curling. Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost positive. The answer to your question is we streamed a lot of sports back in Beijing. Live.
Okay.
We streamed, I want to say, over 20 different events live in Beijing. In the Winter Olympics, it's actually probably going to go down, but only because the sheer volume of sports from summer to winter goes down.
Okay.
So there's just not as many that are going on. We're still obviously being very careful not to monetize the broadcast and that element. Again, there's such a premium nature and such a high cost to a spot within the Olympics that we absolutely don't want to jeopardize the monetization of that by streaming all things live. But we absolutely recognize that consumers, want the content when they want it. So we're going to do our best effort to stream as much stuff as possible. It'll probably be somewhat of a game time decision as to what gets streamed live and what doesn't, but we absolutely will have live streaming as part of the Vancouver presentation, and anything that goes on broadcast will absolutely be on demand very quickly after its broadcast window and available online as well. So everything we put on the air will eventually find its way online for consumers to find and consume.
Do advertisers get any more excited to be associated with a live stream of, say, curling than just the on-demand clips?
There's absolutely some advertisers who love the idea of a live stream and they'd be attracted to that, but I think for the most part, a pre-roll or the ad unit in front of a live stream versus an on-demand stream is essentially the same to them. I don't think they saw too much there. Live streaming does have a little bit of a premium to it, but it's a negligible difference, and I haven't seen too much demand. The challenge for us is that, again, I can't confirm which sports will be live, so it's not something that we've been actively selling as a standalone piece because I can't really tell them what content's going to be in there yet. But there's a lot of interest in it. But again, I think video is video online to an advertiser for the most part. As long as it's Olympics content, they're okay with it.
And basically the determining factor of what goes live is going to be, if we stream this live, what will be the effect for the broadcast? If it's detrimental to the eyeballs in the broadcast, maybe we want, if it's curling and
that's one factor for
away.
Sure. That's one factor. There's other factors too. There's the MSO relationships with our cable providers. If it's content being streamed on one of our cable properties versus NBC, we have to be careful of the MSO relationship there. There's also, I guess, challenges in terms of the IOC and the International Olympic Committee and what they'll allow us to do. So there's a lot of constituents that have to sort of sign off and make it all happen, and that's sometimes the challenge. But we'll see more and more of it. I think there's always a concern of monetizing that on-air piece, but all of the research that we've seen to date, both on Olympics and all of our entertainment programming as well, is that it's not monetizing it, or monopolizing it. It's not taking away from people who watch television. Television is still the number one preferred choice of where they want to watch their content, the big screen, the comfort of their home. But if they miss something or they're not able to catch it or their DVR doesn't work, the ability to catch up on that stuff online is really, I think, the number one reason people are using our streaming, both in Olympics and our entertainment content. But I think you're starting to, there's obviously a change out there, and you're starting to see more and more people, I think, get accustomed to watch content online. So that'll be an interesting shift to watch out for over the next year or so.
Cool. All right. Well, Matt, I appreciate it. And as we close out, my last and final question, do you get to go to the Olympics?
I sure hope so.
Okay.
I sure hope so. You will find me hopefully somewhere in Vancouver in February, yes.
Well, if your bosses are listening, let this man go.
Yes.
And
I need
get
to be
me a
in
ticket
Vancouver.
too.